Welcome back to your favorite spoken English channel, Vision Spoken English. It was a chilly autumn night, the kind where the wind howls through the trees, rattling the windows of every house it passes. In a small, forgotten town, there stood an old mansion, abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. The locals knew the stories. They were passed down through generations like folklore. Some said the house was cursed, others claimed it was haunted, but no one ever dared to go inside, not even on a dare, except for one group of friends. Aisha, Raj, Nisha, and Karan. They weren't afraid of old ghost stories. They wanted to see for themselves if the mansion really held the horrors people whispered about. So one fateful night, armed with flashlights and courage, they decided to venture into the mansion. As they approached, the house seemed to loom larger than life, casting long shadows that stretched across the ground like dark tendrils. The iron gates were rusted and heavy, squealing loudly as Karan pushed them open. The yard was overgrown, wild with weeds and thick with the smell of damp earth. Raj joked, "We should charge admission for this horror tour." But there was a tension in his voice that betrayed his nerves. The front door stood ajar as if waiting for them to enter. Who leaves a door open in an abandoned house? Aisha muttered under her breath, but curiosity got the best of them, and soon they were stepping through the threshold into the mansion. Inside, the air was cold, colder than outside, almost unnaturally so. Dust hung in the air like mist, swirling around them as they moved. The hallway stretched out before them, lined with portraits of people long dead. Their faces seemed to watch as the group made their way deeper into the house. Nisha shivered. "This place is giving me the creeps," she whispered, her voice echoing in the vast empty space. The group wandered through room after room, each more decayed than the last. The walls were cracked, the furniture covered in sheets, and cobwebs draped from the ceiling like ghostly veils. But what struck them most was the silence. The house was utterly still, as though it was holding its breath, waiting. As they climbed the grand staircase, they could hear faint creaking noises, almost like footsteps. But they convinced themselves it was just the house settling. When they reached the top floor, they found themselves standing before a massive wooden door. It looked different from the others, newer, as though it had been used recently. "This must be the master bedroom," Raj guessed, pushing it open. The room inside was untouched by time. Unlike the rest of the mansion, it was immaculate. The bed was made, the curtains were clean, and the air smelled faintly of lavender. It was as if someone had been living there all this time. Aisha walked over to the fireplace where an old ornate mirror hung above the mantel. She stared at her reflection, but something was off. It was her face, but the eyes staring back at her were cold, lifeless, as though they belonged to someone or something else. "Aisha, are you okay?" Karan asked, snapping her out of her trance. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, rubbing her arms as if trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. "This place just feels wrong." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. Nisha rushed over to pull it open, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," she cried, her voice rising in panic. Karan tried to calm her down. "Relax, it's probably just old and stuck. Let's look for another way out." They searched the room, but there were no other exits, no windows large enough to crawl through. The air grew thick and the once comforting smell of lavender turned sour. Then they heard it. Whispers. Faint at first like the wind, but growing louder with every passing second. The voices seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Who's there?" Raj called out, his voice trembling. There was no answer, just more whispers rising and falling in an eerie rhythm. The mirror began to fog up as though someone was breathing on it from the other side, and then slowly words began to appear, scrawled across the glass. "Leave while you still can." The group froze, their blood running cold. Nisha backed away from the mirror, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to get out of here," she whispered, clutching Karan's arm. Just as the panic began to set in, the door suddenly swung open on its own. They didn't waste a moment. The group bolted out of the room, racing down the staircase and through the hallway. But as they ran, the house seemed to change around them. Corridors twisted, doors appeared where there had been none, and the exit seemed farther away with every step. Raj stopped, gasping for breath. "This can't be real," he panted. "The house, it's changing." Karan turned, his face pale. "It's trying to trap us." Aisha, still shaken by the mirror, pulled out her phone hoping for a signal.